Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grip Locked Foundation Disc Golf's weekly podcast. I'm Hunter, and typically I'm joined by Connor and Trevor, but today it's just me. It's a little bit of unique circumstances, situation, if you will. Basically, Trevor's out of town at the beach. He was going to be gone all week, and then Connor, who was doing Grip Lock with me this week, actually had to leave a day early to go down to, I believe, a wedding. And so we weren't able to get this filmed yesterday. And so because we had to get some other stuff taken care of with him going out of town a little bit earlier. But I didn't want to let USWDGC, U.S. Women's Disc Golf Championship, go by without a preview show. So put a poll out on Twitter. I was like, hey, here's the deal. Would you rather us let it go by without a preview show, which we don't really want to do, or have just me do the preview show? And the votes came in. Just me doing the preview show won. So that's what we're here to do. Break this down, give you all the information that you need to know leading into the coverage that actually starts today of the U.S. Women's Disc Golf Championship. Will be starting this afternoon. Actually, women will be teeing off in about 3 hours from me recording this. The first card will go out then, and then lead card will go out about 4 p.m. Eastern time. Well, I think they technically about 4:30. I think live coverage starts around 4 p.m. Eastern time. So very exciting, second major of the year. And it seems like there's going to be a whole lot of coverage, so you're not going to want to miss this event at all. We're going to be going over the courses that they're going to be playing here, the storylines, all of that good stuff. And, it's kind of reminiscent of our first ever tournament preview. I believe it was for Waco. It might have actually been like a follow-up where we were doing it after a few rounds, but it was just me there. And it was like a test show to see if y'all liked it. Y'all loved it, so we turned it into a full show. So, it kind of takes me back. It takes me back to then. But yeah, let's go ahead and get right into the U.S. Women's preview here. They're going to be playing two courses, it seems like, Token Creek and Elver Park. These courses both seem to be relatively similar in their style. Token Creek, we'll start with that one, seems to be a very park-style course. It's definitely more open, but it has very defined fairways. So there's still difficulty in, like, you have to keep the disc in the fairway. You do have to. There's several times where you do have to hit a gap. Accuracy is going to be important, but it's not like super tight wooded fairways where if you're a little off, you're going to be punished. Where it does seem like you're going to be drastically punished, though, is like actually off the fairway. It's reminiscent to me a little bit of like the woods in Waco, minus the woods part, but where in Waco, the beast in Waco, if you're off the fairway at Brazos East, then it looks like death off the fairway. And that's kind of what it reminds me on a lot of the holes. I was able to find a little bit of coverage from the Mad City Open. I watched some of that, and then I just looked through the pictures on UDisc. So there could be some holes that I haven't fully seen, that I'm not fully aware of. But just judging by looking at the pictures on UDisc and that little bit of coverage I was able to watch, it seems like a very, very park-style course. It seems like kind of like my favorite style of course, but a very park-style course. But it does seem like off the fairways, there is a lot of trouble. So keeping the disc in the fairway is going to be very important here. And judging on the UDisc leaderboard, because UDisc has like the USWDGC course layout in there. And so I went there, sorted by the last 30 days. You can kind of see some of the women who have been practicing out there have been putting in scores in UDisc. You also can see Colton Montgomery's played both of them. So I basically used some of their scores and his scores to judge kind of where I think hot rounds are going to come in. Token Creek, it seems like it's going to be, I would imagine, assuming the weather and everything holds off, everything's good. Which actually, let's take a look at the weather here before we give that prediction. They're going to be in Madison, Wisconsin. So we're going to take a look at the Madison, Wisconsin weather, and it's looking pretty gorgeous. Looks like just partly cloudy and mid to upper 80s for the entire weekend. Again, it starts today on Thursday, goes straight through Sunday. And wind seems to be the windiest today, but doesn't seem like it's going to be a super big factor. Possibly when lead card tees off, it'll be around 15 mile an hour. So the gusts probably could get up there a little bit, but the rest of the time they're going to be there. We're talking sub 10 mile an hour winds. So weather's looking great. So I'm thinking 8 to 10 under par at Token Creek will probably be a decent score out there. And the layout, it looks like they're going to be going 2 rounds at Token and 2 rounds at Elver. So 8 to 10 under at Token, I believe, will be a pretty solid score, or not solid score. I believe that'll be about the hot score. Getting into double digits is definitely possible. I think that plenty of the holes, especially for the top women in the field, are birdieable. There are some, 200 some foot par threes. Some of the par fours do only get to like the 400 or 500 range, but there are a few holes that definitely seem like the line's difficult and stuff like that, to where I don't think we're going to see like a 14, 15 under type situation, but that is possible out there. So I would say 8 to 10 under par, probably about where that hot round's going to come in. Elver Park, on the other hand, seems to be very similar. Most of the course seems to be more park style, but there's definitely more woods and more trees in play. Again, this is going. I went through the Jomez practice round they put out. I only had the front 9 out this morning. I don't know if the back 9 is coming out pretty soon, but I was only able to watch the front 9 of the course. But definitely could see some woods. On UDisc, it does look like it's more wooded than what that front 9 was showing. So I'm assuming that some of those woods come into play on the back 9 a little bit more. But regardless, the majority seems to be a good mix. So the majority of holes being played this weekend are going to be more of that park style course. Which, if you don't know what I mean by park style course, essentially I mean like open grassy field with trees kind of in it, if that makes sense. So there are trees in play. There are lines you have to hit. It's not just a wide open hyzer fest, but it's not woods to where like if you miss the line, you're not immediately in like jail scrambling through a bunch of trees. It's just like a field with trees in it. That's kind of what I mean by park style course. And that's what Elver Park seems to be, but there is definitely a little bit more woods in plays. But with that being said, looking at the scores again, it seems like the scores are going to be pretty similar out there as well. And another key factor, so I think the hot round is probably going to come around 8 to 10 under par both courses. So that means the winner for this event, if I'm right in just blindly guessing on that, because I don't have, there hasn't been a previous Pro Tour there this year or anything like that. A lot of the previous tournaments, there seems to be a lot of courses in this area and a lot of different layouts at these courses. So it's hard to find an exact, this is definitely the exact same layout they're playing. So I'm just kind of looking at, again, the UDisc rounds that have been recorded and going off of that, plus looking at the caddy book and stuff like that for this estimate. But if my estimates are in the right ballpark, we're probably going to see the winner. I don't think someone's going to be able to go 10 under every single round. So I would say the winner's probably going to come around 20 to 30 under par is what I would have to guess. But it's definitely going to be interesting. Today's round will obviously tell us a lot, because if today's round they go out and they only shoot like 5 under, it just means the course just is not the same course I'm thinking. Well, I know it's the same course I'm thinking, but I'm, again, judging this solely on UDisc pictures and pars and what some of the women have recorded on UDisc over the last 30 days. So all of that could be very misleading, as I'm sure you've looked at your own UDisc leaderboards locally and been like, there's no way someone shot that. So take that part with a grain of salt, because normally my predictions are based on, previous year scores, the changes to the course, all of that stuff. I don't have a lot of that data today. I just couldn't find it. I tried. So this is basically just my gut, but I think it'll probably be somewhere in that range. But another thing, as I was looking through these two courses, they reminded me kind of like shorter versions of Waco and Jonesboro style courses. Waco definitely has a little bit more tight woods. Jonesboro is definitely longer. Both Waco and Jonesboro are both longer, but they remind me of those style of courses. Like a lot of the holes, I was like, if this hole was picked up and put onto Waco or Jonesboro, I would see it fitting. And so something to note of that is, players that did well there at those two courses, but notably we're coming into a major. And whenever you're coming into a major on the FPO side, you're thinking Page Cat, because that's been, long time reigning dominant players. But one notable thing about it is that at Waco and at Jonesboro, Paige Pierce did not perform well. So that's something to kind of keep into account. Again, these courses are shorter versions of those, and they do seem in a lot of areas to be less punishing than Jonesboro or Waco, but they do seem to require a similar style of golf. So I think there's less opportunities for big mistakes, big numbers, and stuff like that than there are at Jonesboro and Waco. But again, it requires the same style of golf. So not saying that I'm using that slightly in my predictions, but I'm not fully taking into account for two reasons. One, obviously it's not actually the course. Two, it's a major and it's Paige Pierce. Paige and Paul are very similar, that when the majors roll around, other than USDGC and / Throw Pink Women's, because that course you can never predict, but the predictable majors, when they roll around, they're going to find a way to be in contention pretty much every single time. It's just like they have a different gene. They have a different gear that, like, when a major comes around, they like smell blood in the water almost, it seems, and they're ready to kind of kick it into that high gear. and put on a performance that a lot of the field can't match a lot of the time. So it'll be interesting to see if we see that out of Paige Pierce in this event. So some storylines as we go in. First off, I was looking through the PDGA article kind of about this, and I thought that some of these stats are pretty cool. U.S. Women's obviously is one of the bigger women's events, women-only events. Obviously, there's like women's global event, but that is like happens all over the world. This is like just one specific location. And this year it breaks another record. It seems like every year at this point we're breaking records. So record 320 women across 19 divisions this year. In 2022, there's 54. This is all from the PDGA. There's 54 more competitors than in 2021. And the field is over 3 times the size of 2016. And in 2009, there was only 48 total competitors. So pretty wild to see the growth of disc golf. I mean, we talk about the growth of disc golf in a lot of other areas. You know, tournament purses getting bigger, like fields, like competitiveness of the fields and stuff like that. But when you look at like an event like this, there's not many left out there where this shows obviously the direct growth of women's disc golf, but B, there's not a lot of events that are majors, and they're majors across so many divisions, right? Because right now, like the pro, like even at this point, AM and junior worlds are separated, but pro world is separated, pro masters worlds, all of them are like slowly separating, which is a good sign of growth because all of them are becoming bigger and bigger to where it's harder to get a site that can hold as many players as would be necessary if you had pro worlds and AM worlds at the same spot. I mean, that'd be the biggest disc golf event in the history. Like it'd be probably thousands of people. You couldn't do it. You could find the right spot. Charlotte could probably do it, but it would be very hard to do, and it'd be a logistical nightmare to where like there's no real reason to do that. U.S. Women's, on the other hand, though, is one of the few events left that getting them all together, getting all the divisions together in one location is still possible. And it's also, I think it's a great like community type of event because it allows like, obviously if you're a junior or advanced woman, you're looking up to Paige Pierce, Katrina Allen, Evelina Solon, all these players, and having the opportunity to come in. It's similar to, you know, DDO, which used to be the Glass Blown Open, Ledgestone, those type of events where AMs are still a part of these events. And so being an advanced player, you can go to Ledgestone and see Ricky and Paul. You can go to, now it's DDO. You can go out to that event in Emporia and see, you know, Kevin Jones and all these players. And watching that in person, it's a lot easier to make that trip happen when you're going there to play yourself, especially at a major like this. But the experience of being able to watch some of the best players in the world throw on similar courses to you in the same area as you and really see what they're able to do. Super eye-opening experience, and I think it really speaks to the growth of the sport, though. 320 women across 19 divisions, which is 54 more than last year. And I think the big stat here, because obviously, you know, the sport's blew up since 2020 to now, but sometimes, like, if you take a bigger scope back, like the sport's been growing for a while, obviously. So 3 times the size of 2016. That's pretty massive. That's pretty wild. So that means 2016, there's what, like 100 women, essentially, 105 or so. And now we're at 320 across all the divisions. So pretty big growth that we've seen there. One thing that I will say before we get into some of the like player storylines is this event is always curious to me because it's weird. And some of this is because there's been issues previously. Paige Pierce, I believe it was last year, it might be 2 years ago now. But previously she's been very vocal about like issues, you know, with courses and stuff like that. Like they played courses that had like crisscrossing fairways and blah, blah, blah. That she was very vocal against this event previously. Not this event, but against some of the things that she would call the PDGA out, saying, you know, at times she had said that she felt like they just didn't care about this event as much as they cared about other events. No complaints that I have heard going into this year. I think this year everything's setting up to be a great event. But what it's done in my head is it's kind of tainted the view of USWDGC slightly as a tournament when I know Throw Pink Women's happens. Mainly because USDGC, you know, the men's counterpart to this, or not men's, the mixed pro open counterpart to this, the USDGC has a FPO tournament that runs at the same time, Throw Pink Women's, and it feels like when Missy Gannon won it last year, it felt like she won a major to me. I think it's just the prestige of the course. it's happening at one of the most prestigious majors that happens in disc golf. And so it does still feel weird knowing like U.S. Women's is happening right now. Obviously, it's a major. We're going to talk about it, cover it, all of that. Come October, I'm going to feel like U.S. Women's is about to happen when Throw Pink Women's goes down. So I'm curious to see kind of how the two continue to coexist, because the A tier, which is Throw Pink Women's, still draws just as competitive a field because of the course and because of the purse. And so it's definitely interesting to see what the growth looks like alongside these two. I would assume that a big thing here, at least in my opinion, something that should be factored in, is like Throw Pink Women's. USDGC, obviously one of the future concerns with USDGC is Innova's ownership of it. I think USDGC is literally trademarked by US Disc Golf, which is like, I believe is a part of Disc Golf United, which is Innova East. So you got to go through a long snake there. But Innova has always ran United States Disc Golf Championship, and it's a PDGA major, to the point that like a lot of times USDGC doesn't even use the current PDGA rules. They're typically an X major, meaning like the ratings and stuff don't count because they use stroke and distance and they do stuff like that. And I think Throw Pink Women's would start to fall into that same slot. So as the PDGA, realistically, the PDGA is in a weird spot because they don't have full control like they do at Pro World, like they do at USWDGC, like they do at some of these other, like European Open, Champions Cup. The PDGA has full control over how those are run, and they can have as much or as little say in that as they choose. USDGC is slightly different because at the end of the day, like it seems like Innova is the one making a lot of the decisions. Granted, to this point, Innova has made a lot of great decisions, I think, with USDGC. But they've also made some that are questionable from the lens of the PDGA. And so I think that the PDGA, it's a weird thing of they have US Women's, USWDGC. Obviously, a logical choice would be putting USWDGC the weekend of USDGC. That's a very logical choice. Have them both go down and just, instead of it being two separate events, it's just United States Disc Golf Championship, one big event. Negatives to that, A, you lose what we just talked about. 320 women across 19 divisions. USDGC is strictly a pro division, strictly a pro event, so it would just be FPO and MPO. You would lose that camaraderie. But B, well, I think, because eventually this event will get big enough that you're not going to be able to have that camaraderie, that community anyways. You're not going to be able to have 19 divisions in one location, like we talked about with, Pro Worlds and stuff like that having to be split, and AM and Junior Worlds even having to be split. That will eventually happen at USWDGC. So I don't think that alone is a reason enough not to. But I do think the fact that right now the PDGA has a grasp on this major, and going to Throw Pink Women's and saying, hey, you know what? Throw Pink Women's, we're going to turn into USWDGC, even though that as a viewer, as a fan, that feels natural, that feels right. In a lot of ways, I think the PDGA would be giving up a lot of control and a lot of, I guess a control, it sounds like a negative word, but in this case, it's a positive word. They'd be giving up a lot of their control over US Women's to Innova, but it'd still be a PDGA major. So it would put them in a very similar boat if they were to give up US Women's to Throw Pink Women's. So it's definitely an interesting situation, something that I think will continue to be a talking point for the years to come and something that we'll continue to keep an eye on. But it is a weird one because of the existence of both tournaments. Last year, at least, and some of the previous years, it might just be because I'm a simp for USDGC. But actually, it's probably definitely what it is, because I know especially some of you new fans, really don't like USDGC, and I fully understand that. But someone who's been in the sport for 7-8 years now, however long it's been, and has been a diehard fan of professional disc golf, USDGC holds a special place to me. And so when I see Throw Pink Women's go down, that feels like the major. And so it's like right now, USWDGC feels like the major because we're here. It's time for it. It literally starts in a few hours. But when time rolls around and October gets here, Throw Pink Women's is going to feel like the major, if that makes any sense. Like when it's December, November, we're in the off season, I'm going to have to remind myself of US Women's being the major and not Throw Pink Women's, if that makes any sense. It probably does. It might not resonate. When I'm here by myself just talking into a camera, I can't tell if my points make any sense at all. Half the time I can't tell anyways, but at least I have Trevor and Connor to be like, oh, no, that makes perfect sense. Now I'm just rambling to a camera. So hopefully you understand what I'm saying there. I definitely think it's going to be an interesting one, an interesting thing that's going to continue to develop as a storyline here. But On the player side, one very big note is Kristen Tatar is officially not going to be in attendance this year. When we talked about it on Monday, it was still somewhat up in the air. Her partner, Silver, came down with COVID. I haven't heard an update as to if Kristen actually ever tested positive, but she's doing the smart thing and basically like, I'm with Silver. So like if he has it, it's not smart or safe for me to travel to the U.S. right now and play alongside these competitors, whether she's testing positive or not. And so she's obviously taking the right precautions and stepping back and not playing this event. But that's very sad as a fan because she is having, when she is playing, she's the best player. When she is at events, her record is, she hasn't finished outside the top 3. Her record when she is at events, she's the number 1 FPO player in the world. Obviously, she lost Champions Cup in a heartbreaking fashion on hole 18. But we would all love to see her at this major as well. But what that does is it definitely opens the door a little bit more for Paige Pierce to add to her list of wins this season, add to her list of wins for her career. I believe this would be her 17th major title. She's able to take it down, but it would be her 2nd major win this year, which would put, if she won this weekend, would put her win count at 2 majors and 3 Pro Tours so far this year, which that's a tough list regardless of other finishes to look at and be like, yeah, she's not the best player in the world. That's a tough, if she wins this weekend, that's a very tough list to make an argument against, regardless of her other, somewhat subpar performances. That, being only like halfway into the season or so, if Paige already has 2 major wins and 3 Pro Tour wins, so she'd already, even if she loses the other 2 majors, the European Open and Worlds, she already won 50% of the majors this year, which is crazy. If she wins this weekend, and 3 Pro Tour wins, it's getting harder and harder to win a Pro Tour. We'd be silly to think that Paige isn't going to pick up another 1 or 2. So she could realistically, end the season with 3 major titles and 5 or 6 Pro Tour wins. And the 7th, 9th, 10th, whatever places finishes, we're not going to be thinking about those at the end of this year. So Paige Pierce, I think this is a big moment for her season. Obviously, it's a big moment for her career as well. A major win always is. At this point, I don't think you can even knock a win without Kristen in the field, just because we have, it's not like Kristen's been here, and then, there's only 1 tournament and Kristen's dominating, and then this 1 tournament happens and someone else wins. Then I think it's fair to be like, okay, but Kristen wasn't there. But when Kristen isn't going to be here for an extended period of time, and then you just can't compare it. You just can't be like, well, okay, but let's remember at US Women's, Kristen wasn't there. Can you say it? Yes. Will Trevor say it on Monday? Absolutely. If Paige wins. But I think at some point you have to just, a win's a win. At some point you can't knock a player. It's not Paige's fault that Kristen doesn't show up. So it's definitely, I don't think there's a lot of pressure. I don't think this is a must win for Paige by any means. But whenever you're walking into a major, and to me, Paige and Kat have the most pressure to win walking into a major as the 2 most dominant forces in the FPO field. With that being said, I'm not sure if I'm going to pick her, but we'll get to predictions here in a second. Another storyline here is Valerie and Alexis Mandujano are returning to the site where they won their 2016 Junior World titles at. Valerie won it in Junior 1, and Alexis won it in Junior 2. They beat some notable players in these wins, on the road to these wins that are actually going to be there this weekend. So Valerie beat out Kona Panis in 2016 at Junior Worlds by 35 strokes at that event. And Alexis beat out Cynthia Ricciardi by 23 strokes at that event. Again, they won their respective divisions, Junior 1, Junior 2. But you have to take this with a drastic grain of salt, because only the final 9 was played at Token Creek, which is, of course, being played, but it was also played at the Shorts, it seems like, which is not, I don't believe that's the layout being played this weekend. So basically no similarities score-wise or anything relevant like that. So really not a super good predictor, other than they are showing up to a location that they've won a major at previously. That's the biggest thing, is they are in a town that's going to be somewhat familiar. They've been there before. They are at a park that they have good memories of hoisting a world title at. So there is a little bit to be said about it, but when you're looking scores, 35 strokes over Kona, 23 strokes over Cynthia, those actual strokes don't really mean anything. It's a talking point. It's a cool stat, but it doesn't really mean anything because that was on different courses. Obviously, also was 6 years ago. But it is just coming back to a place that you've won at previously. It's got to feel good. And I do think that could provide a little of early momentum to Valerie and Alexis. So definitely something to watch out for there. But let's go ahead and wrap this show up a little bit. We're going to go into some keys to victory, and then I'll give you my predictions for the week. We're not going to do points for predictions this week, mainly because Trevor and Connor obviously aren't here. And also, I don't want to build my lead too much. I've done a lot of research on this event, and if I text them right now and said, hey, give me your predictions, I think I would have a slight advantage, selfishly. So anyways, keys to victory. Number one, I think putting is going to be pretty big this week. Putting is one that I typically am like, I think that throwing a lot of times is more important on the pro stage than putting because a lot of the players are very good putters. But in courses like this, it seems like a course where you're going to have birdie opportunities and you're going to need to capitalize on most of them. And that comes down to putting. So it definitely seems like it's going to allow for quite a few birdie opportunities. And I think the player who's able to putt well out there will have a solid shot at this event. And I think the other thing that's going to be important to make putting important is the other key to victory is actually getting to the circle. I think circle 1 in regulation is going to be a big stat to pay attention to this weekend. With park style golf, you definitely have to be giving yourself opportunities because it's a type of golf where I don't think it's birdie or die by any means. But when you're at a park style course, it can start to feel that way regardless if the course plays it or not. And if you get on a par streak and sneak a bogey in there, and someone on your card in that same streak gets 2 or 3 birdies, it can really kill your momentum. And momentum, I think, is going to be massive. So I think getting out there, giving yourself those opportunities, those chances to even connect, to even make your putting matter, it's going to be very important. So I think players who are able to get into circle 1 in regulation, really circle 2 in regulation too, both of those stats are very similar to each other, but giving themselves the chance is going to be very crucial. So putting only matters if you're in position for that putt to matter. So if you're putting 100% C1X, you put 100% C1X and 100% circle 2, and if they're all for bogeys, you still lost. So I think it's crucial, obviously, to get yourself in a position where those putts matter. So with all that being said, what are my predictions for this week? We'll go with the top 3. First off, I do think that Valerie Mandujano is going to take down this tournament this weekend. Again, looking at the courses, it reminds me of Waco. It reminds me it's hard to tell, it's hard to express why, because if you go hole by hole, it doesn't. But if you just look at the style of course and the style of the parks, again, I just feel like I could pull a hole out of there and throw it onto Waco and replace, switch out holes with Waco in some of these courses. And I feel like it would just fit. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Could be completely off, but obviously, Valerie won Waco. She's been playing solid all year. She's won here before, as we just talked about. I think that she's going to perform very well out here, and I think that Valerie Mandujano is going to take down her first major of the year. I do think, though, Paige Pierce is going to be the one that's pushing her. I think Paige is going to be the player that comes in second here. Again, when it comes to a major, it's just hard to count Paige out. No matter what major it is, it's hard to say Paige isn't going to win coming into the week, because statistically, that's just your best bet. I mean, this would be her 17th win. She at a major. She already has 16 under her belt. This would be her 71st Elite Series or major. So wild stats there. Hard to count Paige out. So I think Paige is going to come in second. I think she's going to be the one that's pushing Val, and I think it's going to be close. I think these courses play where it's going to be exciting golf all weekend. In third place, I'm taking Owen Scoggins. I think Katrina Allen could play very well out here. It just depends so much on her putt, similar to Evelina Salonen. And when it comes to putting, I'm just not 100% confident with either of those two players, but I am, when it comes to putting, very confident in Owen. And so Owen, it's obviously just going to be, what are those putts for? Is she able to get herself in opportunities to birdie? And looking at the courses, I really think she's going to be able to, because I think you have a lot of choices off the tee. I don't think it forces your game into a certain mold where you have to throw, certain shots. I think there's a lot of different opportunities out there, and so Owen will be able to really play her game. And it also seems like distance isn't a super big factor out there, which is what holds Owen back at a lot of courses. So I think with her putting and the style of course we're walking into here, I really think Owen has a good shot at a top 3, possibly even a win out there as well. So Valerie 1, Paige Pierce 2, Owen Scoggins 3, and I did go ahead and make a dark horse pick for this. I didn't use the same, regulations like we do for pro tours and stuff. I just kind of went with a player that I think people haven't super heard of. And this goes back to the 2016 AM Worlds, which, again, playing different courses, but it's just the vibes of walking back somewhere you've won previously. And that's the AM1 winner from that year, Sai Ananda. This is a name that we've heard kind of in and out. Not fully sure if I don't think she's fully on tour. Doesn't seem like she's played a full tour schedule this year. but she's definitely been a player that has popped onto lead cards before in the past. I've heard this name a few different times. I saw that she had won the 2016 Am and Junior Worlds, and I was like, you know what? That is a player that could do something at this event. So don't be surprised if Sayananda comes out in this first round and puts up something that gets her kind of into contention. Again, she's not fully touring, so it could be something where she might be a little rusty. I'm not fully sure what her current game situation is, but I do think it's a player that you can at least watch out for out there. So hopefully you enjoyed this tournament preview. I apologize again that it's just me, but I hopefully did a good enough job covering all the storylines, talking points, and getting you ready for all the coverage that's going to be coming your way, which there is a whole lot of it. Obviously, Disc Golf Network is going to be doing live coverage. If you can watch that live, I really think it's going to be a thrilling event. It starts today, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Disc Golf Network. But if you can't, Jomez is out there. It seems like Central Coast is out there, GK Pro. There's a lot of coverage going on this weekend, so be sure just to check out all the post-produced coverage as well if you want to watch it the next day, or if you want to follow every shot from a specific card. Post-produce is still the absolute best way to do that, and live will get you a lot of coverage from a lot of different cards, so be sure to check those out, and we'll be back on Monday, July 4th. We should have a show, but stay tuned. We might have to move it to Tuesday because we're not going to work on July 4th. It's just a question of will we come in, film grip locked, and go home. I don't know the answer to that quite yet. Got to talk to Trevor and Connor. But whether it's Monday or Tuesday, we will have a show recapping the U.S. Women's Disc Golf Championship, and we will have Trevor and Connor back with me. So we'll be back to our normal ebb and flow of things. But yeah, hopefully you're excited for the U.S. Women's. I know we all are, and we'll be watching right alongside you.